As always, this podcast is for parents. Today we have a special guest, a parent that's been through it. We have Jon Erickson, whose daughter Kenna is in her second year at LSU. And we're going to go through Kenna's story and Jon's story and what it was like as a parent of a high performance, high performing, high flying kid. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you, Duey. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
High flying kid.
we, not when we first met, but shortly after we first met, Kenna was in the finals of Little Mo. So let's go back let's go back before that.
Okay.
How did she get started? Was tennis a sport that you and your wife played, or?
Well, so it's funny. My wife and I have a little bit of a differing story on this, but the root of the whole thing was the same. My wife was a very high performance athlete in college. She was all conference, all this, all that in two sports, in soccer and fast pitch softball. And then I also played semi-professional soccer. And so we had experience as athletes, kind of understanding the dynamic. And more importantly, I think the thing that kind of set us down this road is with my wife in particular, with fast pitch softball and soccer at the time, I don't care how great you are, with the exception of actually being on the national team and competing in the Olympics, because both sports were in the Olympics at the time,
Right.
I believe, there were no professional opportunities for women in sports, in those kinds of sports. The WNBA, I'm not sure if it had
It might not
started
have
yet.
even started, but I think
Yeah, hockey wasn't a thing at the time for women. So we were just like, okay, she's pregnant with Kenna, and
How many kids do you have? Is she your
she's
first?
the only. She's the only.
Gotcha.
And so we fantasize like all parents do. What is this going to turn out like? She's not even been born yet, and we're like already putting these dreams out there, right? But we said, okay, one decision that we made from the very jump was we're not going to tell her if she wants to be an athlete, we're not going to tell her what sport she has to play, what sport she can and can't play, right? Because we want her to find her sport. But the one thing we did want to do was we wanted to make sure that we introduced, because the only two sports that we could think of where you could feasibly have a lengthy professional career post college, if you were good enough, was golf or tennis.
So individual sports was all there was in that realm for women at that point in time.
Exactly. And so we were like, well, we're going to constantly expose her to golf or tennis as a primary sport. But if she wants to play soccer, she can. If she wants to play softball, she can. If she wants to, whatever. And then if she winds up drifting away and into one of these other sports that's not golf and tennis, then that's fine. That's the direction that she chooses, because she has to follow her passion.
It's kind of worked for Trinity Rodman.
Yes, 100%. Right. That's a great example. And so basically what happened is we had my wife was giving fast pitch softball lessons privately. We had a batting cage in our backyard. And so Kenna was born, and she just had a natural hand-eye coordination thing where she would go in the back from literally as soon as she could stand up. She was putting a ball on the tee, and she was whacking the ball off the tee. At that time, it was a softball with a bat, but she wasn't topping over the ball. She wasn't smashing the tee. She was making squared contact with the ball with no instruction, just from watching what my wife was teaching to these junior high and high school kids, right? So she was always like, my turn, and just couldn't wait to go and hit a ball. So,
Another case of, people think somebody's natural and they don't take into account all of these other things that played into
oh,
it. Like
it was 100% the
how many
environment.
swings did she take at
Yes.
a ball?
Yes. It was the environment and the motivation to be like the big kid that was in the cage. Right? That was the motivation at the time. So when we noticed this, my wife went out and got some balls and just kind of was doing like soft toss and like bouncing the ball to see if she could make contact with the ball with her little Dora the Explorer Wilson racket, right? And a regular tennis ball, because the whole colored ball thing hadn't hit yet. Which, by the way, Kenna was the very first group of kids to start in the red ball, orange ball, green ball
Right.
situation here in Texas. So she was hitting the ball off of the bounce with a racket, just no target, just making contact. No net, no nothing. This was out in the cul-de-sac, right? Just and I'm over there shagging balls all over the cul-de-sac, getting my workout in by doing that, right? So it was just fun to see our little kid having fun hitting a ball. But we were like, she's not missing the ball. And it's good square contact, And so at that time, I had played a little bit of recreational tennis. When I got out of the military, I joined the local tennis club and joined a league just so I could have something active to do after work and stuff like that, right? So I had a little bit of knowledge from the private lessons that I took and then playing in league tennis.
So then, did you and April take the lead at first of we're going to get her out and actually on a tennis court and training her, or did you
No.
pretty quickly
No,
put
because
her in somebody else's charge?
that's the thing, right? Because we're talking, she was a toddler at the time. She was 3 years old when she started tennis.
Okay, that's
And
even for tennis standards, that's pretty
right.
early. She was barely past toddling around, and
Exactly. But she had very good balance and very good hand-eye coordination. So April and I, as former athletes, we were like, well, I think it's probably time to see if she can learn this game, and let's see what happens. So I go and I contact a couple of the different local country clubs, local tennis clubs, and they're like, well, she's way too young to start. And I was like, well, how can you say that? You haven't met her yet.
I think it's an assumption because I'm pretty.
Right.
When I was running tennis centers,
Yeah.
people behind the desk would have absolutely pushed towards our what we call the Mommy, Daddy, and Me program, which is just fun little stuff with tennis racket,
Yeah.
and
See, they didn't even
Yes.
have that. They had none of the. It's funny you mention that because I know your history of doing this at like public facilities and stuff that you did.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting that at private country clubs that they didn't have something like that, like a dumping spot to where a mom could dump their kid off and learn a little bit about tennis while she's playing in her mommy league or whatever, right? Or ladies league. But basically what happened is I got turned away at each different place. And so we were at I believe it was a high school tennis court. And I saw this guy giving lessons. And I went up and spoke to him. And he said, well, I'm not saying no, but let me have a look at her and let me see what I'm dealing with. because the kids that I saw him giving lessons to were primarily high school age kids who were hitting, especially boys. And come to find out, this guy's background, and I got to give him props. His name is Dixon Ogu, and he was a Davis Cup player from Nigeria, mm-hmm. and part of what we laughingly call the Nigerian mm-hmm. mafia, which I'm a proud member of, because all of the Nigerian coaches that were in his network were all super supportive of us, on going down the journey. But to Dixon's credit, he took time out. He did some drop exercises with her and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And he said, absolutely, let's get going. Right? And he took her right away. So Dixon is the coach that I always say was the first person that took a chance on my kid. There were other people later on that took a chance on her for other reasons.
We'll probably go through some of that as we talk.
Right, but Dixon was the guy that said, absolutely, let's do this. She's got great hand-eye coordination, good balance. Let's do this. And so we did. And
so let's fast forward a little bit. So
sure.
At that point in time, you were in Houston.
Yes. Yeah, in Katy, and the far west side of Houston in Katy. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And at some point in time, you decided that maybe there weren't enough comparable players or some reason that you needed to make that move away from that primary, very first experience to something else. And that was when I met you, was around then.
Basically what it was Kenna had gone through the red ball, orange ball. In red and orange ball, they were combining boys and girls, and she was winning most of the tournaments that she was entering playing red or orange ball. We had to separate from Coach Dixon because he refused to coach red ball, orange ball, green ball. He was a yellow ball only tennis coach. And so we wound up at one of the country clubs that had the...
Because there was no competitive outlet for somebody with yellow balls. So
all she was going to do was train.
Right.
And so, and so there was no way of having a metric to see where she is in her development process or comparing to where she is versus where she could be or anything. So the only way you can test yourself is in tournaments, and there were no yellow ball tournaments for juniors that were that young. So we had to separate from Dixon. We went to a country club, and a lot of people in Texas know about Peter Farrell because he was the director of the club where I was a member, and he was also on like some USTA competition board or something for junior tennis. So that's why we went to that place, was because he was influential in junior tennis in Texas at the time, and he was implementing all the programs into the club, so it made sense.
So it's a name that, you being someone in the community, as you asked around,
yes,
a name that probably popped up several times, which said, let me look in this direction.
Yeah. And he had some wonderful coaches on his staff. Chris Lieben was one, Julian Lopez was another, that also worked with Kenna throughout this process to get her to where she was super, super competitive. So much so that we started to have the conversation that we needed to broaden our horizons, because we were driving to one facility to be with one high performance group on a couple days. We were driving across the other side of town to be with another high performance group for other days so she could get more training. And she was in public school.
So you're now looking for more of a turnkey solution?
What we were looking for were two things. She was missing a lot of school because of tournaments, because she was making it to the finals in tournaments, which means you're playing Monday tennis. So she was starting
So how old is she at this point in time?
fifth grade,
Okay.
sixth grade, something like. Well, I think when she came to ATA, Austin Tennis Academy, she was in sixth grade, if I remember
And
correctly.
she was 11, I believe.
I believe
That
she. I believe our
because you had come to Little Mo before
11s.
you came.
Yes, she played Little Mo 11s, made it to the national championships in Little Mo 11s, and then played through that tournament. I think, if memory serves me correctly, I think she lost in the semifinals of the 11s. But that was our first
So
exposure to Austin Tennis Academy,
right.
and that it even existed, because we didn't know, being in the Houston area, we didn't even know that this kind of a facility existed in Texas.
Okay.
We thought we were going to have to move to Florida next. So we had the fortune of playing Little Mo National Championships, being exposed to ATA.
So if I can halt you for a second,
Sure.
can you tell? Did that? So Little Mo is a yellow ball event.
Yes.
It's single birth year.
Yes.
Right. So that she's playing 11s and she's playing other 11-year-olds. So it's
Yes.
not playing against 12-year-olds. There's no younger kids your second year, and
Nope.
you're playing 11-year-olds. And so qualifying through, because there were 3 rounds at that point in time. I think there was
Yes.
sectionals, regionals,
Yes.
and then nationals.
That's correct.
Right. And so
Yeah.
you made it through those rounds where
Yes.
only out of the sectionals, only 4 people from each sectional goes to nationals.
I believe
And
that's
that's
correct.
out of the 4 tournaments, now there's 16 that are Little Mo Nationals.
Yeah, yeah.
And she makes it to the semifinals. Did that give you a light bulb moment? Because now she's competing against other 11-year-olds from all over the country, and she's in the hunt.
All I know is this. I remember, because the USTA sends out that Inside Tennis magazine, and I remember always seeing the ad for Little Mo Tennis in the magazine, and the quote where Andy Roddick said that was his first real tournament that he ever won. And I remember Dixon chirping in my ear about eventually you're going to have to get away from little kid tennis and play real tennis. And so I was kind of putting the two things together. And that's when we decided, in Texas at the time, we had the whole champs, super champs situation where the rest of the country was doing level 1 through whatever, like we're all doing now. In Texas, we were different because our state is so big that we had, I can't remember what the one prior to champs is, but
I think it became challengers. It started
Challengers.
out as Zats.
yeah. And then you go to champs, and then you go to super champs. McKenna was very quickly super champs, and she was shooting up the state rankings in super champs. So and that was as she was 10, 11,
Okay.
years old. So that's when we knew it was time to try the Little Mo thing.
Good place to dig in, because there's progressions.
Yeah.
And you as a parent had experience with sports, both of you
Yeah.
as parents, but tennis is a whole new thing. What's this
Right.
earned rankings, that's champs, super champs? What were some of the things that you felt like you had to go searching to find out that you wished somebody had given you that cheat code of here you go?
Literally everything, because I had to find out as a parent from a planning perspective, how many points do we need before we get to the next level? Okay. So if we play here and she does well, we get how many points? And you're having to tally these points and strategize which tournaments you're picking. I hate to say it, but it was almost like, it's not quite as bad as like ITF points chasing, which we can get into later. We didn't have to go to Thailand to play in some tournament to get some cheaper points, right? But in a state the size of Texas, I knew people that would go from Houston to El Paso, or they would go to Amarillo.
Because there's
to
just not as many people,
to
or
pl-
there's not the same culture, so there's not programs that are
the
developing
talent
mass numbers.
isn't anywhere near as strong as it would be in a major metropolitan area like a Dallas or a Houston, right? So you could go to Tyler, or you could go to Amarillo, or you could go to these other places, and which we never did do that because I just couldn't justify driving 8 hours across the state to play in a tournament.
For those of you that have not been to Texas, I believe it's 13 hours furthest from one corner to another.
That's
driving and still be in the state of Texas.
That's right. That's right. It's insane. So there are parents that would do that in order to elevate their child, but the problem is once they played in a Houston or Dallas event, then they're scratching their head wondering why their kid got bounced so early from a tournament, right? Because they had almost like a false ranking because they were points chasing. But as a parent, you have to figure those things out, right? You have to figure out what's really important. Where am I, more importantly for us, because we're not a wealthy family, where am I going to get the most bang for my buck? And April and I, being former athletes, we were always like, look, if she's not good enough to do it here, then she's not good enough to do it there. And so you have to be the big fish in your pond first before we move to the next one. And so we've kind of...
I think that there's certainly value in doing that. I think it's not culturally where it used to be. It used to be, maybe not when I was a kid, but just older, maybe even when I was a kid, that you could be number 4 in the country, but the 8th best kid in your block if you were somewhere in California. I mean, so you're all the different age groups and whatever. So you're at the top of the country tournament-wise, but you can't beat 7 of the kids in your own program.
You can go to Boca Raton, Florida in the tennis world, and that is, or Delray Beach, and that could very easily be the situation where you might be number 5 in the country in your age group, but homeboy down the street just whooped your tail. Because he didn't have the funding to go play a level 1 national to get your ranking, but he's still better than you. And so that's the interesting thing about this tennis game. If you have the funding that you can travel and get your ranking points up, that's the name of the game, honestly, is it really is funding and support.
Let's come back to that one, because I know that being in a major collegiate environment, you have some understanding of NIL.
Yes.
Right. And
very.
So how does that potentially trickle down so that someone who has to start playing more national events because there's not enough local competition, or international events because they've sort of mastered the USTA, but people at the next level, agents, college coaches, whatever, are basing things on international rankings, so playing ITF tournaments.
Let me tell you, I will tell you that there are some junior players now. NIL is not really something that is for beneath college player level yet. My understanding is it's coming rapidly. But what I will say that I have seen, and there's one girl in particular who has been very successful funding her own junior tennis career and travel with crowdsourced funding. To where, I can't remember the name of some of these crowdsourcing things, but, where you can just donate $25 or $50 to help a kid on their journey to this, that, or the other. This particular girl's crowdfunding never stops because she's going from one place to the other, to the other, to the other. And I have no idea what her parents' social status is, whether their financial status is. I don't care. What I admire, though, is that kid is ambitious enough about wanting to do it for herself that she took it upon herself to do all this crowdsourced funding to fund herself. I don't know where she is in her career now. I stopped paying attention to it because things got real with my own kid. I just remember being impressed by that. And
Well, I think we can say that almost everybody needs help, because
oh,
if you're at the international level, and even if you have coaches who are willing to donate time,
yes,
of which isn't necessarily even fair to the coach, but airlines aren't giving you tickets for free,
nope,
hotels aren't letting you stay, the restaurants that you
nope,
need to eat in while you're there, that the shoe companies, maybe if you're at a really, really high level, shoe companies might be giving you some stuff to put on your feet. But for
yeah.
most people, they're paying for shoes, they're paying to get rackets strung.
Well,
They're
and we were super blessed in our journey because Wilson was, well, first off, Adidas was fantastic with Kenna from the very beginning, because of her ranking and accomplishments. They allowed her to be part of the Addy Player program where she could get heavily discounted clothes and shoes. It wasn't free yet, but Wilson came through later, with a grassroots, quote unquote, head to toe deal where she was getting clothing, shoes, rackets, strings, all of that stuff. She was given that stuff by them, but she had already won her first gold ball by then and stuff like that. So she was on the rise, and most people that have those kind of accomplishments start to get those kind of
yeah,
the clothing and equipment deal. They come across those pretty quickly after you win a gold ball.
right. So there's closer to the sharp end. So
Yeah.
probably, I guess, 20 years ago now, I was in Atlanta, and I was sponsored by Nike.
Yes.
And Mike Nakashima, who was the person responsible for those kinds of sponsorships
Right.
at the time, said real clearly that we give product to two types of people. We put the first pair of shoes on a kid's feet, and we give the people that you see on television.
Oh wow.
Right. And so, like, Nike's thing, like, not in between, that you're loyal. The kids in a local inner city program or
Yes.
program are pretty loyal, that, oh, they gave me my first pair of tennis shoes. Now I'm going to be a Nike customer for years. So the value of customer acquisition is one pair of shoes that didn't cost them very much. The long-term value of that customer is potentially, so many times that. And
It's funny psychologically that you say that, Dewey, because it was very difficult for Kenna to commit to wearing Wilson shoes because she was so grateful for what Adidas had done for her previously. But because the facility she was training at was a Wilson sponsored facility, and Wilson had been so good about other things like rackets and stuff like that, it just made sense that, okay, now that I'm playing level one nationals and now that I'm playing ITF tournaments and stuff like that, I should be repping Wilson because
yep.
they're offering me a head to toe deal. They sponsor the facility, who, by the way, that facility was sponsoring her also with a scholarship to the academy and some other stuff, and
Okay, so
we can cover that
let's
later.
plug back into that, right?
Yeah.
So we're at that place where you've played Little Mo once, so you've had
Yeah.
exposure to Austin Tennis Academy.
Yes.
You're thinking about destination tennis as opposed to feeder. Like, I
Yeah.
categorize programs as either they're feeders
Uh-huh.
or they're destinations, and maybe there's a level in the middle where the beginner program fed into this little regional city, biggest program in the city.
Okay.
And then you get even bigger, and
Yeah.
you like IMG, Everett, whatever the flavor of the month happens to be
Well,
at that level.
I'll tell you very quickly. I can sum this up very quickly. When we were in Katy, she had reached a certain level because of our ties to a lot of the Nigerian coaches. We got introduced quickly to the Osigwe family, which the older daughter had won the French Open Juniors. She was an IMG product. Dad was
He was a
coaching at
coach at IMG,
IMG.
correct?
So we had been invited by Mr. Osigwe to come and visit IMG as a possible next home for Kenna's tennis. And again, a lot of that was formulated because of the relationship with Dixon. So we were staring a move to Florida in the face. But my wife is a teacher. She's a certified teacher in Texas. She was worried about getting, and probably maybe overly worried about it, because I don't think it was probably going to be that big of a deal. But, she was going to have to transfer her teaching credentials to Florida and right? Just a lot of extra things going on, right? And we weren't sure if they were going to allow us to have a scholarship or anything like that. But we had just, like I said, we had just visited because of Little Mo. We had visited Austin Tennis Academy. And after doing some quick research, we found out that it was a facility that was so unique in that, take the tennis aside, because it's hard to argue when you see the banners all around it, the people that have been through the place and the success that athletes from Austin Tennis Academy have had on the national stage. They were the only academy in Texas that had classroom teaching for education. Not kids sitting in a room with a laptop doing homeschool stuff with headphones on, but actual certifiable teachers that were teaching curriculum so that my daughter could get a sound education. And come to find out later, it wasn't just a sound education. These teachers are phenomenal. And the education that she got from Austin Tennis
Right.
Academy.
So you come to Austin Tennis Academy. She's 12. She's 12.
Yeah.
And she's all of a sudden coming from a public school environment where there's 22, 24 kids in a class to at Austin Tennis Academy, she's in a class that might have
5 or 6.
And so there's no hiding in the back of the room.
Nope.
There's no...
Nope.
You're
going to be engaged because that teacher is engaging you every single minute that you're in the class. You're engaged.
Did you know that when you went, because I think there's a perception that because it's a tennis program and people are there for tennis, that the education is somewhat second class.
I didn't find out what it was going to be like until when we were here for the Little Mo's, for the 12's Little Mo's. We came a week early to train and to just visit the facility. By that time, I think the Dent family had just launched their academy up in Keller, Texas. Mm-hmm. So I had spoken to them, but they were still in the initial phases of opening, and there was no classroom training, classroom schooling going on. There were the couple academies that everybody knows about. I think it's like Brookhaven and Lakes or something like that are up in Dallas. But again, that was
probably T-Bar also.
T-Bar, yes, thank you. T-Bar for sure. T-Bar was one that we were looking at heavily. But none of them had classroom teaching with real teachers. They had people that would wander around and would answer a question if you had it, but it wasn't structured classroom learning. And so when we showed up to ATA for the 12's Little Mo, we showed up a week early so we could have a formal visit. She trained with some of the kids in the normal academy setting. And then after Little Mo's was over, we were driving home, and she was like, they have everything I need there. We don't need to move to Florida. They have what I need there. And I really don't want to go home. I would prefer to stay. And we're like, girl, you're going home because we don't have the logistics set up yet for this to happen. But what we wound up doing was she wound up shadowing the school and the academy for a week, so that she could see what student life was like. She could meet the teachers, see what it's like to be a student, see what it's like to be a student athlete. Because the interesting thing about Austin Tennis Academy, and this is not a commercial for them, I'm just super grateful, is it's a college prep academy. So this isn't public school where you've got, all this crazy stuff. They allow you to explore. You have sometimes as a parent, I think maybe a little too much freedom, but they hold you accountable for the mistakes that you make, and you learn from those mistakes, and they grow you as a human a lot faster there. And then the most important thing is, if you're somebody who is highly intellectual and somebody who can learn quickly, they don't put the brakes on you and say, oh no, you have to be in this class because this is the class for your age. And fast forwarding, that's what allowed Kenna to go and play Division I NCAA college as a 16-year-old, because she was taking advanced classes when she was in junior high and early high school mode.
And we'll certainly get to that, but I remember your wife telling me that Kenna was talking to her, telling her that at LSU, as a freshman in college, the math was easy because she had it in 8th grade or something. So the education was a good part of why you chose ATA over other options that there were, because you were going to be moving for anything at that point in time. It was we're going to leave Houston. So you come and you get a piece solved. We can do it all in one place. We can get our education. We can get tennis. We can get private lessons. They host a whole bunch of tournaments, so I'll probably play some events right here, including Little Mo, which, played. And now there's a whole nother set of questions that probably comes up.
Well, the biggest set of questions that was crazy was, I left my job in Houston to move here, but my wife couldn't move here with us for 6 months because she had to finish her teaching contract that she had in the public school system in Katy ISD. So we had a split household for the first semester that she was at ATA because my wife had to finish her teaching contract. So my wife is driving up from Houston to Austin every weekend just so she can see her family. And then we've got 2 households going at the same time, and all of that disaster. Plus, oh, by the way, in order to make the move, I had to leave the position that I had at the time, and find something to do while I was here. I was super grateful because I had a friend of mine at the time that owned an agency that he was willing to let me do sales and management remotely, and this was prior to COVID. So I was doing remote working before the whole COVID thing happened anyway. So I was grateful for that opportunity. But yeah, we had to have a split household for half a year until my wife could finish her teaching contract and join us up here. And then after 20 plus years of experience teaching math in Katy ISD, it was a natural fit for her to sign on to be a teacher at Austin Tennis Academy, which couldn't have been more perfect. It was a great opportunity for her.
Plugged into the ATA community in a different way. So
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Again, another thing that was so great about ATA for us, they literally embraced us with open arms and helped the situation along.
Yeah. Okay. So now we think about the ATA journey. So
Yes.
12 years old, played Little Mo Nationals, but not looking at L1s or whatever they were, Super Nationals or whatever
Right.
they were called at the moment, as we're going there to win it. Maybe we're qualifying in, we're going to get so you didn't even.
We didn't even know that there was a such thing as national L1, L2, L3 tournaments. The only thing that we knew about was we knew that there were the Super Champ tournaments at that time in Texas, and we knew that there was a hardcore national championships in San Diego.
So, which is several age groups away. So
Yeah.
she's still a little kid.
Yeah.
And so it's aspirational.
Yes. We didn't know ITF existed. We certainly didn't know that there were a ton of L1, L2, and L3 tournaments all throughout the country. We had no idea. And that was something that we were to learn, later through the journey. And that's something, had I known that there were those performance opportunities available to strive for, I could have prepared ourselves financially, possibly, to be able to do more of those, and wouldn't have done so many of the lower level tournaments. We would have focused more on the higher level tournaments so we could have progressed even faster on the national stage, and then later on the ITF stage. We wasted a lot of money playing in tournaments that we probably didn't need to play in.
So you're saying you believe you should have stair-stepped sooner. You spent too
Yes.
much time on each tread,
Yes.
as opposed to looking toward the next one sooner. And
From a
maybe because
competition perspective only, yes. From a developmental situation, I think we probably maximized what we could do from the developmental situation. From a competition in a ranking situation, I think we probably could have stair-stepped even faster than we did, because every time we took a step up, she was able to adapt relatively quickly and then excel. So so the first time we found out that there was a such thing as a level 1 national was when she went to compete in the 12s indoor nationals that was in the Boston area.
Okay.
And she did very well there. That was, I want to say that might have been her first tournament to travel with ATA. Coach Jack Newman went for that one and supervised, the preparation stuff. Of course, her coach is Doug Davis at Austin Tennis Academy, and he was her day-to-day private coach. But Jack was the traveling coach for that particular, and of course he's the owner of ATA. But he was the coach that traveled with her to Boston for that. And that was our first exposure to what a level 1 national talent pool looked like. What did that look like? And so, and she did I want to say, I feel like she lost in the semifinals for that. I think she finished 4th. I don't know. I don't have.
Yeah, so you get 4th, you get ungats.
You get nothing. You get nothing. You get a pat on the back, and we'll see you next year.
Finish 3rd, you get a bronze ball. You finish 4th, you get nothing.
If you walk away with no hardware, you don't remember how you did. So
that's probably a rough place to be anyways, right? So if you come in 4th, you've lost your last 2 matches.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's right. So I believe that's where she finished. I could be wrong on that. She could have finished 5th or 6th for all I know. But at the end of the day, she didn't finish in the hardware. So, but it was good exposure for her in 2 ways. It showed her where she needed to be, but it showed her that she wasn't that far away.
So did you believe, because just prior to that, she had lost in the finals of Little Mo 12 and unders. So
Right.
do you believe that it was the USTA experience that
Yes.
gave you a sense of here's where she is amongst her peers as opposed to...
Well, because we weren't sure how much of an indication Little Mo was, how big the talent pool that participates in
So
Little Mo versus USTA.
looking back at it, how many of those kids that she saw in Little Mo are still around, like
Well,
either about to enter college or playing
let's
18s?
just say this: the girl that beat her in the final of Little Mo 12s, which was the highest level of Little Mo competition, is now at North Carolina as a freshman. Participated in team training at Team USA like Kenna did in Orlando at player development. So they were in the process all the way through. So if that gives you any indication of, well, you don't even need that as an indication. You can look at the roster of the past winners, and they're all names that you recognize from the Pro Tour. So I just didn't, in my mind, I wasn't sure how deep the talent pool was for Little Mo versus obviously the national talent pool for USTA obviously is bigger. May not be better, but it's bigger.
Because everybody involved in competitive tennis understands that USTA exists. Many people,
Right.
depending on where you are, don't even know that Little Mo is
That's right. I wouldn't have known
something.
if I hadn't opened the Inside Tennis magazine and continuously saw their ad for the tournament and saw Andy Roddick's little statement. And then later they started featuring, Coco also, because Coco won the 12s national final for Little Mo also.
Yeah.
So if you're a girl, that really means something to you. So it's one thing to see Andy Roddick say it, but now you've got a girl.
Yeah, and
Who's saying?
there are bunches of them. We now have
Oh,
great
yeah.
big banners that go up for Little Mo. So the Taylor Fritzes and
Oh, yeah.
Sophia Cannons
Oh,
and
yeah.
that whole.
Yeah.
There are so many people.
Right.
Mackie McDonald. There
Right.
just kind of goes on and on
Right.
and on and on.
And the people that run the organization could not be better people and more supportive. The Little Mo organization. Fantastic organization. And if you don't know about it, your kid should be playing Little Mo if they're 12 and under. So,
Okay, so now, kind of 14s. Because as you've said already, she adapted to different levels of competition quickly.
yes.
And so, how did you approach playing up versus playing within age group? Was it? I mean, and I'll be
always
honest with
played
you.
up.
I have a belief that 16 and unders is a wasted age group.
Yeah.
Like 14s is pretty big. It's where kids have growth spurts and things like that. 16s is for the best of the rest.
Well, I'll tell you how I figured it out. There is a national team coach that is in charge of the talent pool that is 14s.
Okay.
And I had a talk with her. Her name was Lori. Her last name is slipping me right now. I'm sorry, Lori, if you ever see this. But she was fantastic. But she gave me a very sound piece of advice. Because I asked her one time, I said, okay, so Kenna, I think at the time was 12, maybe 13. She was on Lori's radar. We had met Lori at Clay Court Nationals in Boca Raton, so that should have been, I believe, 14s clay courts, if I remember correctly. Happened to be the first time we met Chris Everett too, so that was cool. She got a photo op with
I
Chris
think
Everett.
it's pretty funny. You're not that far along, and what was probably the biggest thing ever. So Clay Court Nationals, you're like, I don't even remember where it was.
Well, because this whole journey is an absolute whirlwind.
Yeah.
It's like one thing is slapping you from one side to the other, and you're like, everything just runs together because it's one event after another, after another, after another. And so, but I will tell you, Lori told me at Clay Court Nationals, because I asked her point blank, I said, listen, you're somebody who has a wealth of experience, and I'm somebody who has zero. So I'm just going to ask you, should my daughter should she play 16s?
Mm-hmm.
And and I told her, and she told me, she said, look, your daughter needs to do well at 14s. And again, I believe she was 12 or 13 at the time. She said, if she is a national class player, she's going to skip 16s and immediately be playing 18s. Because nobody cares about how you do in 16s.
And so there's some ramifications to that.
Yeah.
Because there comes a point where she's focused on 18s, hasn't played 16s,
Yeah.
and hasn't quite reached a level where she's qualified into the 18s highest level.
True.
So now looking at 16s and how do I get in? And
So by this time, the whole super champ thing went away in Texas, and we were doing the level 1 through 7 or whatever that it is. So you're having to build your national ranking in 18s to be able to get into these level 1 nationals. So you're playing level 4s, you're winning level 4s, then you're playing 3s and 2s so you can get your ranking high enough so that you can get into the 18s.
But so she's in 18s but wants to play a 16s national and has to get a wild card.
She never, no, that was, she was playing 18s, but she had to get a wild card into 14s indoor nationals.
14s.
It was 14s. And so she was the tournament director of the 14s indoors told us later that he believed that she was the first time that a wild card holder had ever won the national championship, the national indoor championship. So she had already been playing up in 18s, but she was only, I think she was 13 when she won the 14s indoors because she was playing up so much. Now you got to remember, Kenna now is if she's not 6 feet tall, she's right at it, right? So she's always been tall for her age, and she was a very powerful ball striker. So the truth of the matter is, from a game style perspective and the quality and heat that she was bringing in her serves and in her ground strokes, she didn't have that much of a difficult time adapting to the 18s game. Mentally, she had a problem because not all of those girls were intimidated by her power and size like they were down in 14s. So she could afford to be a little bit of a bully in 14s until she reached like the semifinals and the finals of the highest level of 14s. Then those girls were every bit as good. And I still see them in the ITF junior rankings right now because they're finishing their junior career. Some of those girls are in the top 50 in the world ITF that she played and in the 14s indoor nationals. And they've had a fantastic junior career themselves. And now they're getting ready for collegiate tennis also. So
Okay, so she goes back down to 14s, playing her age group.
yeah.
Comes away with balls. So the trophy case is now starting to have not just Little Mo National finalists, but having these
And Texas Super Champ trophies.
Right. And it's having a wooden box with a ball inside of it. So she's winning balls.
Yes.
And stays in 18s, having had reasonable success in the 18s.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially on the level 4 and level 3 levels. But I'll tell you, the thing that was the real breakthrough for her was when she got the invitation to go to USTA player development, and they started working with her. Because ATA and Doug Davis had given her a fantastic foundation from a tennis perspective. You know, she was hitting big balls for her age when she got to ATA, but then ATA molded and crafted that power and that size into the game that she had, enough to where it opened the eyes of the USTA player development staff to invite her to come and train. And the interesting thing about that journey is that's how we get to where she won the bronze ball in singles in clay court nationals. Was she had done a training block
In the 18s.
in the 18s.
Okay.
She
And how
had
old was she then?
15, I want to say.
Okay.
She was either late 14 or early 15. She had completed a training block with USTA player development, and then they took her to a couple ITF clay court tournaments that were in Florida. There's a string of like 4 ITF clay court tournaments that starts up in the northern part of Florida and works its way down to Miami. And then you go to South Carolina for the 18s clay court nationals, right? So she was in a heavy clay court training block with them. And then she goes to, and then ATA sends for the clay court 18s. ATA sends Coach Ashley, who won balls in every single age group.
Ashley was
as
number one in every age group in the country.
Yeah.
So nationally.
Not only that, but she's an amazing coach and an amazing person. So I couldn't have been more thrilled that Ashley had accompanied her there. But because of the training that she got both at ATA and then the foundational training on how to actually play clay court tennis at USTA, set her up to win. I like I said, I think she was a young 15 when she won the bronze ball at 18's clay court nationals. And then that's when she was like, okay, now I know for sure that I can compete legitimately against the best kids in the country. In
so
18s.
Probably now needing things get harder, right? The more you go up, if you're in an academy, the higher you go, the less peers that are probably going with you. So it's no longer a matter of go to a tournament, somebody can send a coach, and they're coaching 4 kids, so the expense gets spread out over. It's now you foot the bill, academy foots the bill, somebody, but it is... Well, it's now expensive for somebody. Let's just say it's expensive for somebody.
In our case, we had incredible support. Well, obviously, when she's training at the player development, USTA picks up the expense for the training, the coaching, and whatever events that she travels with as part of Team USA. So that was a relief for us. You know, they were fantastic with that. But the real support came from Austin Tennis Academy. There's a fund that they have, that there's scholarship money and stuff like that set aside.
The Austin Athletics Scholarship Foundation, AASF.
AASF. And if it wasn't for them at the direction of Jack Newman and the scholarship awards and the travel sponsorships and scholarships that we were given, none of this would have happened without that support. Because we are not a wealthy family that we could spend that kind of money to be able to take her to all these crazy events all around the country. And when she hit the ITF tour, you know, the 2 ITF events that we have in Texas, the one in I believe it's McAllen, not McAllen, it's up in the Dallas area. and then the one down in Corpus Christi. Those are the only two ITF events all year that are attainable in Texas. So then you're traveling to Florida, California, or somewhere on the East Coast.
So you're essentially playing a full-time national schedule. So if you're
Yeah.
playing the ITFs within the
Yeah.
U.S. and you're playing nationals,
Yeah.
the other ones, you're traveling nationally.
Well, and then come
All
to
the
find
time.
out, sometimes it's less expensive to go to Costa Rica than it is to go to California.
Interesting.
So sometimes, or some of our friends would travel to El Salvador, or if they're lucky enough to come from a primarily Spanish-speaking family, they go to El Salvador or they go to Colombia or somewhere in South America. It's actually less expensive to make that trip or to Mexico
Interesting.
than it is sometimes to the American ones because the hotel rooms are cheaper, the flights sometimes are comparable, the food is less expensive. And if you're lucky enough to have a parent or a coach that speaks the language, they can get you around, and it's actually more affordable to do that. So, like Ashley, a company kind of want, not that Ashley is a bilingual Spanish speaker, as she probably would tell you that she knows enough to barely get by.
But she
But
also had experience as a pro
as a professional, yes,
traveling to those where you're really
yes.
on your own at that point in
Yeah, it
time.
was invaluable experience that she brought to the table as a former tour professional. So, she took Kenna to Costa Rica, where Kenna won one of her doubles titles was in Costa Rica. Yeah, I mean it's all of that.
So at that point in time, and coming back to the NIL
Yes.
discussion and is it trickling down and where's the opportunity, is that the place where it would have unclogged a bottleneck that was there? If there
I'm
had
not
been more of
I'm
that
not
money.
sure I'm not sure how NIL is going to come to play in junior athletes, and I'll tell you why. NIL exists because it was a workaround from the illegal pay to play that was happening in college football. And what NIL is now is pay for service. So it allows you to profit from your name, image, and likeness, which is what NIL stands for, as opposed to having a booster giving you a fat wad of cash
Yeah, a
in an
bag.
envelope.
Getting a
And
bag from a booster.
yes, and so it made it legal for an athlete to be paid. And not only
But
that, but a
for
lot of college athletes were being exploited by video game companies and stuff like that who were using their name, image, and likeness in video games without the kid actually being able to profit
yeah,
from
I
it.
mean that's true. That's where the original lawsuit came. But I
Yes.
think that there was also an issue for the kids that were at a young age into social media and
Yes.
were actually making money
Right.
that because of NIL it enabled them to do that and not lose their amateur status
That's
so that
correct.
you could be an influencer
Right.
and
And
then
that's where I see
move.
this going because I don't see Mercedes Benz signing up a 12-year-old to endorse their latest car. I don't see Rolex signing up a hotshot 16-year-old player to endorse their watches. Maybe that's going to come in the future. Honestly, I hope it doesn't for kids that young. But I do see from an influencer standpoint where a kid is using a certain product and they have a following of 10,000, 50,000 followers, and they're endorsing a product that they're already using.
Oh,
So then
absolutely.
the company
Yeah.
kicks them back a little bit of a thank you,
Right. And that's what
right?
it really, I think that's what juniors is, but understanding how to manage those develop and manage those
Well,
relationships puts you in a better place when it comes to college. And if money's coming from one of the collectives or
right.
wherever that is, if you've shown that you understand that world and
Yeah.
you're going to rep those products well, then
Right.
you're probably more marketable.
What I'm afraid of with junior tennis, with kids that are under the age of 18, is I'm already hearing in the collegiate level that there's a such thing called an NIL agent who is actively shopping NIL deals for collegiate athletes. And I'm worried about sleazy agent types getting their claws into kids.
Well, isn't that a marketplace thing? So that if that's what's the perception is, if you can be other than that, so you are reputable and can be trusted with.
Yeah.
I mean, because
But we all know we came up in the era where it was like, Joe Bob's uncle over here was going to be the agent for the family and wound up fleecing the kid.
yeah,
You
I mean,
know,
everybody's.
Yeah.
I think all the way through, you look at the Joe Lewis's being
Yes.
doormen
Yes.
at Vegas casinos because the people that he thought he could trust
Yeah,
took the money.
that's right.
And so isn't being in that world a little earlier teaching you those skills? I mean,
So here's what I do think. You have a multimedia company and partnered with Kim, right? That you guys took the opportunity with Kenna being at Austin Tennis Academy to pour into her. And it started, what you guys were pouring into her was how to feel comfortable looking adults in the eyes, speaking to them, sticking the hand out, shaking their hand while you're looking them in the eyes, and thanking them for taking the opportunity to watch you, and thanking them for any comments or compliments or whatever that they might give you, but also preparing for the larger stage for
yeah, I mean, I think she
for
wasn't.
interviews.
I don't think she was ever scared, because the first time that I put her on camera was we were doing the charity event. So we talked
Yes.
about Austin Athletic Scholarship Foundation.
Yes.
It has a fundraiser every year called the Scholarship Shootout.
Yep.
And I was deciding we were going to broadcast these client doubles
Yes.
matches to the world. So we were set up with
Yeah.
professional looking broadcast
I
things,
remember, yeah.
and brought her in to sit down and talk a little tennis while we're kind of also commentating.
Yeah.
And she was 12 at the time. I think that was shootout in the fall of 2019. So same year that she lost in the finals of Little Mo 12s.
Yeah.
So there was this sense on our part of Kenna's path looks like it's going to be here, and might be skills that she needs. She is a very attractive young lady. She has
Thanks
a
to her mom.
personality. Yeah. I'm not touching that one. But so she looks like she has a path. So
Yeah.
it's like, well, bring her in and talk about her experience, because she had just lost in the finals of Little Mo 12s when we had this event. So it gave a little platform for her to talk, or for me to talk to her about
Right.
what that experience was.
Right.
And then I think that continued on, because as she had more and more success,
Yes.
Austin Tennis Academy is real big on having kids up in front of groups of people.
Yes.
And so she comes back from winning, and Coach Newman will, in front of the kids at practice that day, which might be 50, 60 kids, tell us about your experience.
Yes. And I have to tell you, it's very interesting because hanging around the academy and watching, because of the preparation that you and Kim gave her from a media standpoint and how to handle that situation. And then also because of the public speaking opportunities that the ATA college prep gives, where they have to stand in front of their peers and give presentations and all these things, prepared her so that when she did win that first gold ball There's a video that has been floating around of the talk that she gave to her teammates after when she came back about the experience, gave her an opportunity to express her gratitude to them for being training partners and for letting iron sharpen iron.
So I actually recorded that, and I remember her specifically saying things about how that ball belongs to all of them, because without them, they should all take pride in her having had success.
Dewey, the biggest moment of pride that I have from that whole thing is that nobody told her to say that. That came from her heart. And for me as a parent, to be able to see your kid actually express gratitude for something, because let's be honest, as parents, sometimes we look at our kids and they're like, man, they're ungrateful punk, or whatever, right? Because it's in that journey of being the parent-kid relationship, right? And to see that come out of her mouth and it wasn't prompted, that actually came from her heart, man. And I just thought to myself, first of all, I was grateful that you guys gave her the opportunity to be able to express herself like that in front of her peers, but then also for the fact that she was able to express herself like that in front of her peers and actually show gratitude. Man, that's one of that. When I look back on all the great things that she did as a junior tennis player, that might be one of my favorite things. And it wasn't her hitting a ball.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's an
why
experience.
I've always done this is I got it at West Point when I had to memorize MacArthur's opinion of athletics. Upon the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds, which upon other fields on other days will bear the fruits of victory. Right, and so in that case, he was talking about war.
Let's go West Point. Let's go West Point.
But
go Army.
It was
as an Army veteran,
beat the hell out of Navy.
Yeah, as an Army veteran, that does my heart proud.
But really, he was talking about sports being something that would help the U.S. when we had to battle in a life matters situation. But it's the same thing of the task prioritization and discipline and sacrifice and all of those things that they learn, which will play a role in their future successes, going everywhere, college and beyond. Let's go.
I was going to say, the reason why that mattered so much to me and why your training was so valuable is, I have to tell you, when you hang around Austin Tennis Academy, I want to say it's like a 99.5% of all kids that go through that go on to play college tennis somewhere. So it shouldn't surprise you to know that there are college coaches that come there all the time.
Right.
It would also be shocking to know how many of those college coaches can't speak in front of a group as well as a lot of the kids that have been trained at ATA to speak in front of a group. So
there are, ATA has moments, certain events where, the juniors have to speak. There's one that, all the juniors have to give a speech, and so they prepare those speeches. And Coach Newman has always felt it important to train those additional soft skills, not just how to hit a tennis ball. Let's jump, because we've been doing this for a minute now, so we got to move. There comes a point where it looks like the opportunity to look at the next level. So out of junior tennis, college tennis is there, but she's still pretty young, and you make a decision. She's going to forego a bit of the end of her junior career, not to turn pro, which is what you hear of all the time, but to go. So how old was she? What were the considerations? How was that move?
Well, my wife and I were spending some time scratching our head, trying to figure out how we were going to continue to fund the ITF journey, because there's only so much money
Correct.
Right? And so the rest of it, we have to.
GiveAASF.org.
Please support that organization, because there are a lot of kids. When you come to ATA, you look around and you see this wonderful golf course community, and it looks like a whole lot of money, and you assume that every single kid that's there comes from money. And it's just not the case.
Even if every kid comes from money, it's like how much money?
This
so
journey
if the
is
tennis
insane.
journey is
It's
$120,000 a year. How
Yes.
how many people have after tax $120,000 laying around
To throw to their kid.
Right.
And just say, here you go, have fun.
Right.
Let's see what you can do.
Yeah.
And-
so it's not everybody
Right.
pretty much could use help. There are some folks that
Absolutely.
go to tournaments in their own private jets and
Right.
helicopters from Atlanta to make it first.
Yeah.
I've seen
been
seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's not
Well,
that's hardly anybody.
I mean, just to wrap it up for you, the journey for us literally came down to money, because we were wringing our hands trying to figure out, okay, USTA player development had slashed their budget. They were only going to be able to support a couple athletes in her particular year. She wasn't one of them. And so the support from player development stopped.
But the costs haven't gone down.
But the cost sure hadn't gone down. Jack Newman, to his credit, did literally everything he could do to squeeze every penny that he could to send her way to continue to support her on the ITF journey. She won a couple doubles titles. I think she won one or two singles titles. And so we were like, okay, so we know she can do well on the ITF circuit too, but we don't have the money to fly her all around the world. And I know personally of people who have sent their kids to India, Thailand, Cambodia, to go and chase ITF points so that their kid can be top 100 in the world, because somehow that's going to help them on their
more power to them if you can afford that.
Oh, yeah.
And you can give the kid the cultural experience of
yeah.
having traveled the world and
absolutely.
all of that.
Yeah, there's no hate in my heart for that. Good for them.
Yep.
But in my situation, as it pertained to my kid, she was already a blue chip recruit. So it was becoming more and more evident that we had already sunk all our eggs into the junior tennis basket. And because of the funding being slashed with player development, Team USA was not an option anymore as a springboard to a pro career. I wasn't willing at the time to sell my soul to an agent yet, or to sell my daughter to an agent, because I wasn't sure that she was ready for the pro tour yet. And literally, the way that it works in college recruiting is the June right after you finish your sophomore year is when you're eligible to start being
Which is
recruited.
pushed back. It used to be June after your, or July 1st after your junior year.
Okay.
Which is but now been pushed back. So there's a 2-year window where kids can communicate.
Something worked out good in our benefit then, because I wasn't aware of that. And I'll tell you that obviously with her being a blue chip recruit in her year, she was still a blue chip recruit even if she went early. So even in the previous year, in the 06s, she would have still been considered a blue chip recruit. So we had, obviously, the floodgates opened up from all these universities reaching out to us, wanting her to come on visits and then potentially give offers and stuff like that. So after several phone interviews, they reached out. They spoke to Kenna first, because that's what they do. They reach out, they talk to the kid. They're like, hey, we've been watching you. We've been tracking you. We're interested. Would you have any interest at all? Blah, blah, blah. Kenna sifted through the ones that she absolutely was not interested in. And fine schools, fine coaches, fine programs. She just didn't see herself going there to those, because there's places like in Ohio, in Indiana and stuff. She was like, why would I want to play tennis in the Midwest? She just didn't really see the value. Of course, I was like, Michigan is one heck of a tennis school, and they're in the Midwest. So don't Notre Dame is a heck of a school for you to go to.
But I think kids have their
Which-
go-tos. They have
Yeah.
already in their mind the region of the country they want to
Yes.
be in, the
Yeah.
schools that they undoubtedly know of, which are
Being that she's
named
from the
schools.
South, she just couldn't see herself playing cold weather tennis. So, unfortunately, that, north of like Kentucky and Tennessee, that kind of leaves everybody else, out of the choice just for that one reason alone. And so, but several of these coaches started saying, hey, we've seen because I think we had to file some paperwork with the NCAA or something. And so one of the things that had to be posted was her transcripts. And they noticed that she already had more than enough transcripts to technically graduate from high school. And again, that's because of all of the advanced classes that she had been taking since she had been in junior high age in early high school. She was taking high school classes. Breaks.
She's a sophomore in high school at this time.
Yes.
And so
She had finished her sophomore year. She was just turned 16 years old.
and she has enough to graduate and is at a standard that schools that are not just athlete schools, but that have good academic standing
Yes.
are looking and saying the education she got at ATA College Prep has led her to a place that she can now matriculate successfully
Yes.
into collegiate environment.
They looked at the course load that she had carried, her GPA, the credits earned, and she had already met the standard to be able to play to go to college, whether she was playing sports or not. If she had just gone to a college prep academy, she had earned enough credits that she could go to college. So the college coaches had seen her transcripts and stuff because they have to be uploaded to an NCAA portal and everything. And at least 3 of them said, look, I know you're spending a ton of money playing junior tennis. We could use her right now if you would consider maybe her graduating early. So, so that's literally what we did. We took their advice. We went on our college visits to the places that she was interested in. Probably after the first visit or so was when and it trickled in, where all of a sudden people were all saying the same thing. And after the first visit, then I started asking the coach, I said, okay, well, what if I told you that you could have her in January? So that would be like after the first semester of her junior year, right? So I said, what if I told you that she would have plenty of credits, and do you have a spot for her in January? And so several of the programs said yes, and they gave us offers. And the whole idea behind it, the way it was pitched to us as parents, is look, she's academically sound. She can handle the college coursework. From a game style, she can absolutely play tennis on the D1, highest D1 level in SEC, or ACC, because they were in a couple different conferences, the schools that we talked to. They were like, she can definitely handle playing. She's got some work to do to be quote unquote an All-American, but that's a journey. But she can absolutely help us right now. So, so we'd like for you to consider this offer and let us finish the development and stop spending your money, spend our money. And so for me, I'm like, absolutely. Are you kidding me? My heart was saying, oh man, I'm going to miss out on the last year and a half of my kid's childhood because I'm sending her off early. But do I sacrifice my own feelings to help her continue to make those steps forward to realizing her dreams?
Right. And they're hers.
And
let's be honest. These are her things that she wants.
Absolutely.
And you've been supporting her dreams, not having her to live the life that you want.
Well, April and I, we're in a little bit of a unique situation. We had our opportunities as athletes when we were younger, right? My wife was a very accomplished college athlete. Yeah, I played a little bit of professional soccer myself. We had our chances. So we weren't the live through our kid parent with regrets because we had already had our chance, right? So we're a little unique that way in that we were just doing everything we could do to support her dream. And since we only had one child, that's the whole thing. A lot of this is easy to say when you only have one. When you got 2 or 3 kids, because there's a family at the academy that's got 3 kids in the program.
Yep.
Right? So, when I take a look at their situation, I'm like, holy smokes, it was rough for us to do it with one. I can't even imagine what it's like for 3.
I think to some degree it gets easier. The younger ones become the beneficiaries of the lessons learned.
True.
From the older ones.
So and you would know that because you had multiple kids in sports too. So.
But so as I ask you, and I played lots of sports, but when I ask you, like, what do you wish you had known, and what comes up as you go from level to level, this is a lot to help other people that maybe they do have multiple kids, but here's the first one through. And so instead of the second or third one being the beneficiaries of it, how can we help the first one?
And my biggest takeaway on all of that is find a program that has a good history. Find a coach who comes to your lesson prepared for what they're going to do with your kid, not asking you what you would like to work on. A coach who has taken his time to map out a pathway for your child, not every child, your child, and is committed to seeing that process through. Once you find that person, you ride that person, and I mean that in the kindest possible way. You ride that person as far as they're capable of taking you, and then if you find that there is a gap, then you go out and find the next person who is able to fill that gap that meets all of those same parameters, as I said before, that can then take you to the next level. And for us, again, to Dixon's credit, he told us, and also Chris Lieben, that was at Willow Fork Country Club in Katy, Texas, they both told us that we had to get out of Houston, right? And they're the ones who pushed us to where we went to where we got to ATA. And then ATA filled that gap. Doug Davis filled that gap. And then the way that ATA works is, you've got a primary coach, but you have an entire team of coaches, including this extraordinary strength coach that's there. I got to give props to Coach Dio Miranda, that's the strength coach.
That he is kind of the Gil Reyes of ATA, where
Absolutely.
You go there because of strength, but it's other everything. Things that you get out of that relationship.
His 2 thumbs and the way that he's able to release muscles that are seized up are miraculous. And that guy is incredible. The pro shop staff, incredible. Andrew the stringer, incredible. I strung my kids' rackets myself to save money, but Andrew was always there to help me, to give me tips, to turn me on to the latest and
Whether if
greatest.
you needed to change a string, what might
Yes,
be if or up a couple pounds down,
yeah,
what that might do to
all of
something
it.
that she was feeling.
All
And
of it, all of it. The entire family at ATA. And it's funny, now that she's been away for a little bit and I'm not there every day, I now have had a chance to reflect on all of that and to appreciate it a lot more than I might have when I was neck deep in the process. So everybody from you and Kim from the multimedia side of things to, obviously Jack being the owner, the AASF, Coach Doug, all of the other coaches that were there on staff, some of the coaches that never touched my daughter but were there to talk to me, to encourage me as a parent. The staff at the college prep who were kind enough to give my wife a position so we didn't have to live in two separate locations. Just everything about that place is the reason why Ken is where she is now. And
which is at LSU. I don't think we've even said where she's ended up.
sorry, she's at LSU. She in her first year as a 16-year-old. Again, because of all of her history and all the people that poured into her, plus Taylor Fogelman, who's the head coach at LSU, Chris Simpson, who's the assistant coach. There's a graduate assistant coach, Bex, the training staff. Man, she shows up in January, right in time to start the team season as a 16-year-old. I was hoping she was going to redshirt her first year and just get used to the college experience. But unfortunately, one of her friends had a catastrophic knee injury and went down.
And so they needed her.
And so they had to use her. She wound up being, she made the All SEC freshman team and was the ITA Southern Region Rookie of the Year for that particular season as a 16-year-old kid. And again, none of that stuff happens if it wasn't for all of the people that had done everything that they did to get her to that point. And this season, by the way, she at the start of this season, she and her doubles partner were ranked 10 in the country. Preseason number 10 in the country.
That's pretty lofty stuff right there.
That's pretty awesome. And now she's gotten nicked up a little bit this year and hasn't been able to perform at the level that she's used to because of some ailments. But she'll grow from that, and she's going to keep going. But the staff at LSU have been fantastic with her, considering how young she was. They put all kinds of things in place to look after her, make sure that she could get to the things that she needed to get to. She had to grow up fast, and she made some mistakes along the way. But they were super supportive, super protective. Her teammates circled around her because they realized she was so young, made sure that they were always looking out for her. And so just a wonderful group of teammates, especially that first season that she showed up and just got dumped right into the fire right away, right? The seniors that were on the team that year really kind of wrapped their arms around her and protected her, and made it a very pleasurable experience. And so now once you get past that, it's like I told her at the end of the year, I said, look, that's all those accolades that you made are great. They're fantastic. Wow. What a season you had. Guess what? After this year, there's no sophomore awards. There's all conference and there's all American. And if you don't make that, you come home with no hardware. So here we are now. The good news is she's on a fantastic team. I think they've reached as high as number 6 in the country this season. They're getting ready to play in the NCAA tournament.
Right. So at the
Yeah.
time that we're recording this, they've played the conference tournament,
Yep.
and they're getting ready to play first round of NCAAs at the end of this week.
That's correct. Yep. Yep. So here we are. This will be now her second NCAA team tournament because they made it last season too. So we'll see how that goes, and then of course she'll meet with her coaches at the end of the season to talk about what needs to happen over the summer for preparation for next year. Come up with some plans. Where are we going to play tournaments? What are we going to do so that when we show up in the fall, we're ready for the NCAA individuals for both singles and doubles? Because it never stops. The clock keeps ticking.
Welcome to the sport of tennis.
Well, and again, because she didn't get a chance to redshirt that first year, her clock started early.
Right.
And so there's a little part of me that's hoping it's on the table whether or not they're going to give these kids a fifth year of eligibility or not. Ordinarily, I wouldn't be a fan of that, but considering that my kid started college at 16 years old, it'd be nice if maybe she had a couple years in a grown woman's body playing against grown women. Because you have to understand now with NIL and with collectives and stuff like that, there's a lot of players who are from outside of the U.S. who have been playing professional tennis for a year or two, who are now coming after maybe being 250, 300, 400 in the world in the pros, realizing they're not making a living and they need more development. They're now using college tennis in the U.S.
And they can because they've taken away the ineligibility based on having tried to be a pro. You could even be successful.
Yeah.
And
there are some penalties depending on how much money you've made and stuff like that. You may lose a couple years of eligibility, but if you're 21 years old and you only get 2 years of college worth of eligibility, but you can get a collective to pay you X amount of dollars to come and play for a certain school for 2 years.
It's now funded, so you're getting the scholarship, and then they're giving you enough money that you could fund the rest of your college education if you've already decided you don't.
Or more importantly, you're taking that money that the collective's giving you and you're putting that in the bank for when you're ready to do a relaunch into the Pro Tour. Now maybe you've bought yourself a year or two on the Pro Tour to give yourself a real shot again, to have a second life on the Pro Tour. So that's what I see. That's what I see happening. When you take a look at the roster of the top half of the Division I colleges, and I don't know about Division II or III or NAIA because I don't have any experience in that. But when you take a look at the rosters and you notice that more than 80% of the team are international players, you have to ask yourself what the future is for junior American players, because we don't have the same ability to go out and play in the tour and then come back after a couple years and start college at 20 or 21 years old after you've been on the tour for a couple years. Those same things aren't afforded to American players for some reason. I know it goes into the rules. I'm not a rules guy. I don't understand it. But I do know this. The compliance department at these universities are unbelievably strict. So if you see an international player on a roster at a university, it's because they've gone through compliance and that they've met the compliance standards. So you can't really say anything about it, but what you can know is this. My daughter at 16 years old was playing against some women that were 23, 24, 25 years old. Mm-hmm. Because, for instance, just as an example, if you get an Israeli girl, when she is done with high school, she has to serve 2 years to her country before she can do anything. Well, that all automatically makes her 20 years old before she even starts. And then, maybe throw in a year or two of COVID into it. You've got a 26-year-old woman playing on a college team, And she deserves to be there, by the way. She deserves to be there. But you've got your 16-year-old little girl that's playing against a 26-year-old grown woman. So,
Well, sooner or later, it's no longer juniors, and once it's not
right.
juniors, it's seniors, and we all get lumped in together
Yep.
where, you know,
That's what I keep telling her. I don't care how old they are. You chose to play on this level,
yep.
so you have to bite the bullet and you got to put it out there. And whatever happens, happens. And if you're not ready, you got to work harder because nobody cares.
Yeah, and then you reach your point. Nobody cares how you did in juniors.
Yeah.
Like don't talk about your junior successes.
Now that she's in
go
college,
go play some juniors some more.
now that she's in college, the only reason why it matters what you did as a junior is it matters what you were recruited as. If you decide to ever enter the transfer portal, there'll be a little blurb that says, "Oh, blue chip recruit.
Right.
Oh, 5-star recruit. Oh, 4-star recruit." Nobody cares about that unless you're in the transfer portal or at the very beginning when you're being recruited for the first time.
Right.
Other than that, nobody cares what you did in junior tennis. And certainly, as all of you guys as coaches at ATA have told me forever, when you enter the pro tour, nobody gives a crap what you did in junior tennis. They care about what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
So
It's nothing more than a stat that's on some commentator's sheet,
Yeah.
so that they can give a little background as to you. But the person on the other side of the net
yeah,
doesn't matter, because they might be somebody who forgoed junior career,
right.
and they turned pro when they were 14.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? When I was looking at Kenna's career, everything that she had done up through Little Mo matched what, because Coco, I think, is 3 years older than Kenna is, maybe 4 now, maybe 4 years older than Kenna, 3 or 4 years. But everything in the trajectory of Kenna's career had matched what Coco did, all the way up until Coco won the finals of Little Mo National 12s, and Kenna did not. She was the finalist. And then after that, Coco's career just continued to go up. But they all kind of, they followed the similar trajectory all the way through junior tennis. But at the end of the day, what matters is the support that you have. And you take a look at a situation like Coco. She was in Florida. She was in front of the right people. She got support from the right people to pour into her. And then like another friend of Kenna's is Tyra Grant, who won the French Open doubles title. They were training together at Team USA at the same time. Again, you get into a situation. Now, she had the benefit that her dad was a former NBA player too, so they had a situation already that was good. And then she had support too from the federation, which was good, that continued to pour into her. And I guess at the end of the day, the thing is if you have the resources to have the right people pouring into your kid, then yeah, you can go pro as a teenager. But if you don't, you're not gonna, because it's just not there. If you don't have the deep pockets to fund it yourself, and then you don't have the support pouring in, it's not going to happen for you. So the best thing you can do is take advantage of those level 1 and 2 national tournaments and do the best you can, and hope that you get seen by the right college coach to get recruited and go the college route. Because at the end of the day, with all of these European players and international players coming in, American NCAA college tennis has turned into minor league professional tennis anyway.
Well, John, good luck to Kenna. I believe that the draw ceremony for the NCAAs
Coming
is
up this afternoon.
So don't know yet who they're going to play.
No.
But I think pretty certain that because of their ranking that they will be the host site for that round.
I have reservations in Baton Rouge just in case, unless something crazy happens during this, and then I'll have to change it to somewhere else. But yeah, that's it's been a wild journey, and it's been
being a student athlete in college is very different than just being a student partier. So
There's not a lot of time for partying, and the quote unquote partying normally happens it's probably different for men's sports. In girls, they tend to all go together everywhere as a pack, so they're looking out for each other anyway. So it's not a raucous party scene on the LSU women's tennis team, I can tell you
yes. Well, good luck, and
Thank you.
hope that you'll come back and
I will, absolutely.
talk to us more about
Anytime.
the journey and what that collegiate journey looks like. And
Anytime.
good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'd love to. Thank you. Appreciate your time.